You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio, brought to you by Revolution Radio, which is also listener-supported radio. This is your host, Royce Holloman, the Redneck Radio Man, joining me today. And I may get her name wrong, and I hope she forgives me, and you guys forgive me, but I'm going to try to pronounce her name here.
Hello.
Don't expect perfection. And the name is Chiara Hohenzollern, if I got the pronunciation correct. And
yes, don't worry. Chiara Hohenzollern is okay. Hello, everybody.
We're going to be talking about a book that her and Robert Bauval have been working on called The Vatican Heresy, and it's going to deal with the Vatican actually being built and designed in such a way to accommodate sun worship. And that's probably not the best description in the world, but I'm going to let her give you a better description herself since she wrote the book. How did I do it describing that?
Okay, I met Robert 2 years ago in a conference here in Italy, and I wrote here in Italy a book about the astronomy in the Divine Comedy. And in this conference, Robert remained very surprised from my work. So he asked me to write this book about Hermetic tradition and how Hermetic tradition is so involved in the Vatican. And when I talk about Vatican, I talk about the architecture of the Vatican here in Rome, and the philosophy that starts in humanism and Renaissance period here in Italy. So we talk about around 15th and 17th century until the modern age. So today we started to see how all is born, how all is grow up, and how is possible that with great scientists as Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, and Kepler give the great theory of centrality of the sun, but how his theory is completely compenetrate with this philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus. And so if I can start, we can say that all starts in Italy, as I said before, in 15th century, to be precise, in 1462, when an Italian priest called Leonardo from Pistoia came back in Italy with some books that he discovered in a monastery in Macedonia. So a few weeks later, Father Leonardo rode his donkey little by little into Florence. Why Florence? Because he immediately, Father Leonardo bring immediately these books to his master, the ruler of Florence, Cosimo de Medici. The Medici family is very popular here in Italy, and in humanist period and the Renaissance period was very powerful, very wealthy, because they founded a bank and they were really, really full of money. So the letter then handed them to his favorite philosopher, a young and brilliant scholar and linguistic called Marsilio Ficino. In our story, we have to remember Marsilio Ficino because in our philosophy, Italian philosophy, is one of the most important. But for Hermetic tradition, he translated for Cosimo de Medici those books that Leonardo from Pistoia found in Macedonia. We have to say that Cosimo de Medici was born in September 27 on 1389, and he was acquired a profound love, a very deep love for the classics, in particular for the Greek philosopher Plato. Cosimo administrated the finances of the papacy too, which dramatically increased the wealth of the Medici family. So, with the Corpus Hermeticum, so much desired by Cosimo de Medici, the Corpus Hermeticus was finally in his hands. And this is the start of our history, because the Corpus Hermeticum is made by 14 books. But go little by little, step by step, because this story is very particular, very original, and really go inside in what that me and Robert called in the book the religion of the world, and how the Vatican, the Pope, the priest, and later the Jesuits, were absolutely convinced about this new religion. And all the philosophers in Italy, but not only in Italy, in Europe too, wanted a lot to bring this Hermetic tradition inside the Vatican, give the Vatican a new age of gold. We can say in this way. So Cosimo de Medici at that time asked to Marsilio Ficino to translate all the manuscript just arrived. The first thing to do was to understand and analyze immediately the work of Hermes Trismegistus, even before we put in hands to the Greek philosopher. Because before, Cosimo de Medici asked to Marsilio Ficino to translate Plato. But this is a very particularity of Italian humanism, because what was before must do before other. So Hermes Trismegistus and Corpus Hermeticum was of Egyptian time, so needs to be translated before the Greek time. This is very, very particular in our Italian history. So Ficino completed his translation in a very short time, in a few months. Meanwhile, the aging Cosimo, who died in 1464, was still alive. So the priority must be given to the Corpus Hermeticum, not only because Cosimo, advancing in years, wanted to read the manuscript before his death, but also because the testimony, more suggestive and mysterious, derived the Corpus Hermeticus' origin to the reputation of text by Hermes Trismegistus. So, as I said before, it was older than Plato. Hermes Trismegistus was older than Plato, and as such he had to be translated before Plato himself. The translation of the writings of Hermes Trismegistus was named at this way Pimander. In the entire work, this title included only the first book of 14 found. But Ficino dedicated, of course, his work to his patron, and what he wrote reveals the attitude of complete amazement with which he had approached this mysterious works of ancient Egyptian wisdom. If I can say, there is a very important sentence that Ficino put in the translation of the Pimander. Because this sentence gives to us how Hermes Trismegistus is put in the history. And this sentence says, by the time Moses was born, flourished astrologer Atlas, brother of Prometheus, physical and maternal uncle of Mercury the Elder, whose nephew was Hermes Trismegistus. So with these sentences, we go in a very old period at the time of Moses, very, very old. And this is the incipit with starts Pimander. And starts not only the Pimander, not only the first book of the Corpus Hermeticum made by 14 books, but this starts the humanist and Renaissance Hermetic tradition, which will have the years to follow a diffusion and an explosion that will contaminate the whole philosophy of humanist thinking first, and then modern. But we leave unequivocal marks in art and in architecture, like we can see after. So maybe now it's time to talk about the origins of Hermetic movement and its effect on 15th and 16th century in Italy and in Europe. Because as we said before, Marsilio Ficino and all the philosophers that start to comprehend very well what was Hermetic tradition believed that Hermes Trismegistus and the Hermetica was at the time of Moses. But this is a great mistake, because the humanists that rediscovered the literature and art of classical antiquity, invigorating feeling on an authentic civilization, renew gold far superior to their own. So the Renaissance movement, calling for a return to the golden age of magic, it was based on a chronological error, radical error, very big error. Because the works which took inspiration from the new wizards of the 15th and 16th centuries, the Corpus Hermeticus, so the Hermetic tradition, were considered very old, as we say, when instead all these works were written between the 2nd and the 3rd century after Christ. So not at the time of Moses, but in the first centuries of the Christianism. The magician Renaissance referred erroneously to a source of the Egyptian wisdom, not very little to the rear of the Jewish patriarchs and prophets, and far anterior compared, if we want to compare it to Plato and other Greek philosophers. In reality, this sacred source dates back to the pagan environment of early Christianity, a religion steeped in magical Oriental influences, which were a refuge for weary pagans who research answers to life problems through different doctrines and religions, like Christianity or the old paganism. And this Hermetic tradition that they build offered to them some answer to resolve really some new answers that centuries bring to them. So now we have to talk maybe a little bit about the Egyptian god Thoth. He was the scribe of the gods and guardian of wisdom, had been assimilated by Greeks with the god Hermes, and comes with the attribute of 3 times larger. For this reason, Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus means 3 times larger. The Romans too made their identification of such Hermes or Mercury with Thoth, and Cicero, our great philosopher and writers of Roman age, in his work God's Natures, explained who lived 5 Mercuries. The last of them, after killing Argus, went in Egypt and gave the Egyptian laws and letters and taken the name of Thoth. With the reputation of Hermes 3 times larger, so Trismegistus, developed a true literature in the Greek language, in which it was astrology, virtues of plants and stones, and arcane secrets and strange signs, and last but not least, of its magic based on their knowledge, with the order to fabricate talismans to get the power of the stars. In fact, Marsilio Ficino, when studied the Hermes Trismegistus, started immediately to fabricate this kind of talisman with the drawing of particular stars. But after we'll see that there was another important Italian philosopher who made more with this particular kind of magic. We don't have to think about this magic like medieval magic, very dark, full of alchemy, very strange. Absolutely not. This is a natural magic. And me and Robert talk about this natural magic in the book because it's all around us. It's something that we can take from nature, from animals. It's something that we are involved because human mankind is nature. So if we think about universe, if we think about the stars, if we think about the sky, all we have around us, this is natural magic. Nothing else. But there is power in this natural magic that we see after with Pico della Mirandola, that can give to people, to man, the power of be ourselves. But now maybe it's better that we continue the story of Hermes Trismegistus, because at the same time, so always in this 2nd, 3rd century after Christ, developed a philosophical literature always attributed to the same revered name of Hermes Trismegistus. So undoubtedly the most significant treatises inside Hermetica are represented by Asclepius and Corpus Hermeticus and have a dating back to 100 after Christ, and that's sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It's okay because maybe I'm going too fast.
Well, I was going to suggest that you might want to speak just a hair tad more slowly because I'm not sure if everybody in the chat room can make out what you're saying with the accent.
Okay. I go a little slowly because I love this book that I write this with Robert. So I know all very well, and I love to talk about it. So sometimes when I have conference too, I go very fast. But now I promise I go a little bit slowly. Okay.
Okay.
So I was talking about Corpus Hermeticum, and all the literature doesn't exceed after 300 after Christ. And so weren't composed in old age by a wise Egyptian priest, like a philosopher thought in humanism and Renaissance period, but by authors probably of Greek origin. They were still unknown. We don't know who wrote Corpus Hermeticum, which traced firmly in Platonism and Stoicism in a kind of strange combination with a strong Persian and Jewish influence. So in the Corpus Hermeticum, in the Hermetic tradition, we can find not only a kind of Christianism, but we can find a philosophy from the Oriental part of the Roman Empire. So at the end, Asclepius is completely dedicated to the description of rituals and magical procedures through which the energies of creations are transfused in sometimes, for example, in some status of gods. The Pimander, the first book of Hermetica, described the creation in the terms not so dissimilar from the Genesis in the Bible. The other volumes, because we say that Corpus Hermeticum is made by 14 volumes, go to, we can say, converse with the soul and how it can break away from a material world to trace the spheres of the planets up to the divine kingdom and regeneration, to give a kind of regeneration. For this reason, after we go to talk about the theory of the centrality of the sun, because it's very important now start to comprehend how this philosopher that we don't know, and this philosopher who wrote the Corpus Hermeticum, how for them was so important. Not only we can we can say talk with the stars, but talk with the sun, because the sun for them was a second God, was the divine, was really what the human has to arrive is the source of our lights. This world was looking for a new reality of answer to unsolved problems, which disciplines and education don't succeed to provide more. For this reason, this world turned to intuition, mysticism, magic. This philosopher of the 2nd century brought inside them the strong belief that antiquities was synonymous of purity and holiness, and the opinion that Egypt was the original source of all science and disciplines, and that the most important Greek philosophers had visited Egypt and had a cultural exchange with the local priests, was the widespread, long and intricate spiritual atmosphere of the 2nd century. The ancient and mysterious Egyptian religion offered new ideas and a kind of amazing attraction. Thus Egypt and its magical religion were identified with the Hermetic religion of the world. The Renaissance reader, therefore, was totally convinced of drawing from the Hermetic tradition a source of ancient wisdom from which Plato and other Greek philosophers had made the best of their knowledge. And this glaring historical error, because it's a very big historical error, or whether it turned out intended to produce amazing results. Because now we can come back to the 15th and 16th century, and we can talk about Pico della Mirandola. Pico della Mirandola is another great Italian philosopher who wrote the Discourse on the Dignity of Man. And but at this time of Pico, we are now in 16th century, the Hermetic tradition was a little bit inside the Vatican. The Pope Alexander VI, the Pope Borgia, from the family Borgia, asked to some painters to put some frescoes in the rooms where he sleeps to paint Hermes Trismegistus. And this is very particular because in the coat of arms of Alexander, the Pope Alexander VI, we have a bull. And this bull, Alexander VI, said he was the god of the ancient Egypt called Serapis.
Osiris?
So what?
Did you say Osiris?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. It's clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So inside the Vatican, inside the bedroom of the Pope, there is Hermes Trismegistus with all the gods around him. And this is, we put clearly very well in the book, because there are some picture of this. And little by little, all the Hermetic tradition wasn't only in the Vatican and in Italy, but in all Europe too. And we are very close to Luther Reform. And after Luther Reform, we know that the Vatican had a lot of problem. But now we can come back to Pico della Mirandola to understand better what was this kind of magic from Hermes Trismegistus. And there is another sentence, very good, take from the discourse on the dignity of man. And this sentence said, already the Supreme Father, God the Creator, had fashioned this abode of the world as it appears. But when the work is completed, the Maker wished that someone was able to grasp the reason of so great work, to love its beauty, to admire its vastness. But the archetypes not left any shape, on which the new creature no treasures, not of places around the world, or were now full, or were distributed in highest, in average, in the lowest degree. This sentence is very, very important to understand what is Hermetic tradition, what is God, what is the Supreme Father. And in the discourse of the dignity of man, this book consists of 900 theses called Conclusion Philosophical, Theological, and Kabbalist. And this is the big difference from Marsilio Ficino, because Marsilio Ficino used his magic and his talismans without Kabbalah. Instead, for Pico della Mirandola, it's very important to realize the magic of Hermetic tradition of Hermes Trismegistus used Kabbalah. As we talked before, this Hermetic tradition grew up with Oriental philosophy, as we say, Persian and Jewish too. So Kabbalah is very, very important to create that magic that we can talk sympathy, is a kind of sympathy of magic. And it's very important, the discourse on the dignity of man, because this text became one of the most important texts of the Renaissance for its emblematic nature, explicitly reconductive to the corpus hermeticum, and insisting on metaphorical and moral sense of man as great miracle. So for the first time after, we can say, the darkness of the Middle Age, finally the man is seen like a great miracle from God, that we can talk light, we can talk Supreme Father, we can talk second God like Son, but is a great miracle. And this is what the Hermetic traditions say. And the man came last in the creation, was located on the border of two worlds, earthly and unearthly, so as to be capable to shape their own nature. The doctrine of man, supporter of their own destiny, connects one of the fundamental philosophy of Pico della Mirandola, as we say before, natural magic with Kabbalah. So the man magician is none other than the wizard who is in the corpus hermeticum. The magic which turns Pico della Mirandola is the natural magic, good and lawful, because it works through the sympathy in those types of spiritual bonds that unite all things. The purpose of this kind of magic is to put in communication the earth with the sky, then that which is inferior with superior properties. So at this time, at this moment, the earth with the sun. So now we can arrive to the theory of the centrality of the sun. We have to say before that there is in all medieval age was very famous the geocentric scheme from Ptolemy, and with the Earth in the middle of the solar system. The solar system was composed from this with the Sun, and the planets only until Saturn, because for the period was impossible see all the other planets, because the invention of the telescope arrived with Galileo's. So in the old medieval age, there is the geocentric scheme from Ptolemy, and Ptolemy wrote all this in his Almagestus, wrote in the 2nd century after Christ. This is very important because now we can, meanwhile, Hermetic tradition in philosophical way go inside the Vatican. It's very important to talk about the Hermetic tradition in astronomy too, because as we say, with the advent of humanism and after of Renaissance, the sun goes to take an even greater significance. As we say before, the earth with the sun, the man as a great miracle. As we have seen in the philosophical thought of the great thinkers of the time, it fits with the arrogant Hermetic tradition dating back to Hermes Trismegistus, as we talk until now. We have to talk about a particular cult, the cult of the Prisca Theologia. What is it? The theology, very, very old, the first theology, whose leading exponents were considered as Pythagoras and Philolaus. And it was automatically added to the notion that the earth was moving around the sun and not vice versa. Pythagoras, with Hipparchus from Nicaea, they were the first who said that was the earth moving around the sun and not the contrary. Of course, the cult of Hermes tended to corroborate the idea of a sun's position different from that described in the Aristotelian Ptolemaic system, was accepted through all the Middle Ages. The Egyptian order of the planets was different from, an example, of the Chaldean origin, because the Egyptians put the sun just above the moon and under the other 5 planets, not in the middle of the 7 planetary spheres. The difference between the two systems was accentuated by Macrobius, origin of the Platonic philosophy, mindset established in medieval and Renaissance, which put light on how the Egyptian order, which places the sun very close to heart, it was the one accepted by Plato. So we have always Plato who came back in our story. Marsilio Ficino, in his book about the sun, recalls the Egyptian order and looks after how our star was placed by providence closer to the earth than to the firmament, to heat it up with spiritus, so with the soul, and ignis with the wood, so with warm. The position of the sun, according to Egyptian theories, fit better than Chaldean order to magic spiritual Ficino centered on the sun. We talk about the magic of Ficino and the magic from Pico della Mirandola, and they are centered always in the sun. However, the firm belief in the Ptolemaic position of the sun was shaken by Prisci theologians. So we talked before about Prisca Theologia, the first theology. So the Ptolemaic system was completely shaken from first theologians. And the fact that more than any other helped to draw attention to general on the sun was the immense religious significance attributed to it by the oldest of them, Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian Moses. The sun, of course, was always been a religious symbol also in the context of Christianity. But in some Hermetic passages, the sun is even called demiurge, better, second god. In Asclepius, Hermes Trismegistus says, the sun illuminates the other stars, not so much by virtue of his divinity and holiness. And you have to believe, Asclepius, that he is the second god who rules all things and spreads his light on all living creatures in the world, and on those that they have a soul, and on those who are not. The much admired Egyptian religion included the worship of the sun, and the sun is included in the list of Egyptian deities present in Asclepius. These doctrines, which have as subject the sun, Egyptian Hermetic tradition, influenced greatly on solar magic of Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola, and were connected from a philosophical point of view to the Platonic conception of the sun, as seen splendor and intelligible picture of main ideas, both from the religious point of view, then the symbolic point of view. So we have 2 points of view now, religious, symbolic, and now we arrive to astronomic point of view. Because in 1507 arrived a very important book, but his publication was only in 1543. And this book was from Nicolaus Copernicus. So now we arrive to a great, incredible revolution in the history of astronomy. And this book is called in Latin the Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium, about the revolution of the orbs, of the planets in English. Unluckily, the book was only published in 1543, the year of Nicolaus Copernicus' death. But the core of the Copernican theory being the sun at the center of the orbits of the other planets, and not the Earth. And this is the starting point of a doctrinal conversion from the geocentric to the heliocentric theory, and shall contain the wisest elements of the astronomical theory of our times, including the correct ordering of the planets, the daily revolution of the Earth around its axis, and the precession of the equinox. So, at this moment, a little summary of what we are talking about. This book is not only involved in philosophy, theology, or what is the Vatican. Now, after we can see at the end what is the big, we can say, secret of the Vatican. But this book goes to comprehend a lot of disciplines. What is the thought of European philosophy, astronomy, theology of 15th, 16th century, and how all these disciplines are really all together. We can't divide them. It's impossible to take philosophy of Hermetic tradition and put far away from astronomy, with now we see with Nicolaus Copernicus, because it was Copernicus who created the heliocentric theory in modern age. Before we talk about Pythagoras and Hipparchus from Nicaea, who were the first from Greece who imagined heliocentric theory. But of course, in the high Middle Age, the Christian priests were completely scared from all pagan culture. So they delete all. But now arrive some astronomers, some scientists who use philosophy and mathematical tool that gave a really changement to culture here in Europe and all over the world, of course. So if we wanted to come back to Nicolaus Copernicus, certainly wasn't through the magic that Copernicus came to formulate the system of heliostats, but thanks to a great achievement in the field of pure math. But as I said before, if there wasn't that focalize on Hermes Trismegistus and on the second god, on the sun, was very difficult that arrived this big revolution and this theory. And this theory of weather was not to miss the facts, or at least without points, which later would prove fallacious, as for example the indication of circular orbits, elliptical instead of the planets. And after we see that elliptical orbits of the planets were discovered from by Johannes Kepler, and how the first and the second law of Kepler's were so inside the Vatican and St. Peter's Square. The errors of Nicolaus Copernicus made concrete results of studies, as for example, forecast Hermes, no more precise than it was already getting available with the Ptolemaic system. But the theory of Nicolaus Copernicus impressed great scientists such as Galileo and Kepler, as we said before, that on Copernican model developed fixes and extension. Therefore, it was later Galileo's observation of the phases of Venus, of the planet Venus, to provide the first scientific evidence of the insights of Copernicus. We have to remember a particular thing about Galileo Galilei. He is one of the most important scientists that we have in Italy and Europe and all over the world, because I think that these great scientists or philosophers or writers belong to all the world, to all people in the world. But when Galileo, in front of the Pope, said that was the Earth that goes around the sun and not contrary, the Pope said to him, "It's not true. We are in 17th century," and Galileo was very close to be burned. So he said, "Okay, it's the sun that goes around the earth." When all this finished, and Galileo went out from the Vatican, he said a very famous sentence that in Italian is "Eppur si muove," what means the earth moves. So he said in front of the Pope, "No, absolutely not." But when he went out from the Vatican, he continued to study what he believed. And Galileo was the founder of the mechanic. And mechanic, on the studies of Galileo, Isaac Newton studied the law of universal gravity. So all is very connected. Sometimes it's a little difficult to talk about all these things, philosophy, Kabbalah, mysticism, magic, astronomy, math. but all is very, very close. All disciplines are close to each other in a kind of all together, really. This is what we want to say in the book. Of course, if when we come back to the Copernican system, we can summarize it in 7 postulates who Copernico put in his book called Nicolae Copernici de Hypothesibus Motum Celestium to the Constitutis Commentariolus. This is Latin, but we can say in English the hypothesis by Nicolaus Copernicus about the planet's movement. And these postulates are 7. I can say these 7 postulates, or we can take a pause.
Actually, can it be covered in about 11 minutes?
Okay.
Or actually less than 11 minutes, about roughly 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay. And after we come back with the 7 postulates from Copernicus.
Okay. Right now we still got 6 minutes to fill in with before the break time starts. Not quite ready yet. But did I correctly understand you to say that back in ancient Egypt they were trying to harness the power of the sun?
Yes, now of course, if we talk about planets, if we talk about sun, now we are talking about in an astronomical way. But if we continue in this way, we can see how the sun is in the middle of St. Peter's Square, and how St. Peter's Square is perfectly connected to astronomy and to Hermetic tradition. So we can say after.
Okay. Do you think they were trying to, harness the power of the sun in the form of rebirth or resurrection, or, some form of immortality?
Sorry, I don't understand.
When they were worshiping the sun and trying to harness its power, do you think they were doing it for the purposes of immortality?
The prophecy of the sun?
Prophecy?
Of the sun. Sorry, the connection now is very bad.
Okay, so you're saying that there is a prophecy of the sun?
Yes, I understand the prophecy of the sun.
Okay, so what is the prophecy of the sun exactly?
In the Hermetic tradition, there isn't a prophecy of the sun. The Hermetic tradition is a description of what is a kind of new religion founded not only on the sun, of course, but on a natural kind of magic. And this magic is between the man and the spheres of the planets. Of course, with the sun too. But there isn't a prophecy. It's not a kind of prophecy. It's a kind of way to see the world. It is a different way to see the world. Not in a completely Christian way of Christianity, Catholic Christianity, or is all mixed, and is a kind of thought, very pure, very full of holiness, full of beauty. As we talked at the start of our interview, the philosophers of humanism and Renaissance wanted, with the Hermetic tradition, brought all to the Golden Age. And the Hermetic tradition, with the words of Hermes Trismegistus, can do this. They wanted to reform the Vatican, because this kind of purity, this kind of holiness can help a Vatican who was in that period very corrupt. But little by little, This was before there was the geocentric theory commonly accepted, but with Nicolaus Copernicus, finally we have the sun in the middle in the center of our planet system, and we remain with the 7 postulates of this discoverer. Can I read? Because 7 postulates are a lot. And the first say that there isn't a single point as center of the celestial orbits of the celestial spheres. The second say that the center of the Earth is not the center of the universe, as before was commonly accepted, but only the center of mass of the Earth and of the lunar sphere. The third postulate say that all spheres revolve around the sun, so it is in the midst of all, and the center of the universe is close to it. The fourth say that the ratio of the distance between the sun and the earth with the height of the firmament is so much smaller than that between the earth's radius and the distance of this from the sun towards the height of the firmament itself. This distance is imperceptible. It is then perceived no apparent movement in the fixed stars. 5. Any motion appears in the firmament does not belong to it, but the earth. Therefore, the earth, with contiguous elements, performs a turn around in a day, and its pole fixed, while the firmament remains unmoved, unchanged in the last sky. 6. Any movement of the sun appears to us does not belong to it, but it depends on the earth and our sphere, with which we rotate around the sun like any other planet, and so the earth makes more movements. The last, the 7th, for the planets appears to be a retrograde and direct motion that does not really depend on them, but directly from the earth. Therefore, the motion of this alone is enough to explain the many celestial irregularities. This is, of course, a great, incredible revolution for the time. This statement represents the exact opposite of what was stated by the geocentric theory of Ptolemy, so commonly accepted. The Vatican, the Church, say always that the earth was in the center of the universe, because the earth and mankind are representation of Jesus Christ. And so this postulate put then under discussion the whole system of thought, then prevalent especially in the field of religion and theology. For this reason, I said before that all this is all in common, all is concentrated, all disciplines are together. Copernicus in his life was very careful to didn't have and take revolutionary attitudes, nor with his way of life, nor in this work, as we say instead with Galileo. As a good humanist and Renaissance searched in text of the ancient philosophers, he made a new computational method to solve the uncertainty of astronomers. It wasn't through the magic that he came to formulate his theory of historical revolution of the Earth around the Sun, but thanks to a great achievement of mathematical calculation. He presents, in fact, his discovery as a sort of act of contemplation of the world, seen as a total revelation of God. Like this that many philosophers had called the visible God, as we said before, about the sun and about the Hermetic tradition and about Hermes Trismegistus. So is in the context of religion in the world that represents itself to the world itself, the Copernican revolution. No, Copernicus himself forgets his aptitude and we can say vocation to invoke the authority of Pythagoras and Philolaus, that we say it starts of this astronomical part of the book, to validate the hypothesis of the Earth's movement. After the diagram in which the new heliocentric system is depicted, there is an explicit and clear reference to Hermes Trismegistus. And there is another sentence very important about this, directly from by Nicolaus Copernicus. He said, "In fact, the sun resides in the midst of all things. Who is able to put in this beautiful temple this light in another place or a better one, that can illuminate everything at the same time from that place? Because the sun rightly call it light of the world, others the mind, other Lord. Trismegistus calls him God visible." So Copernicus too, with astronomy and math, knew very well Hermes Trismegistus. Copernicus moves in a context of his time, not in the conception of the world of Ptolemy, but in the world of Middle Age, but in that of the new Platonism, the philosophy that sees primarily Hermes Trismegistus drawn by Marsilio Ficino, as we say at the start, at the beginning. We could say that was the greatest enthusiasm and interest in the sun, which wanted to build the main stimulus that led Copernicus to undertake mathematical calculations that led him to the understanding of the central location of our star in our planetary system. And he also tried to make plausible and appreciated his discovery, presenting it in this new philosophical sense, because he presented this his theory only in an astronomical sense. It was completely out from the time. His discovery was born under, we can say it this way, that his discovery was born under the good auspices of the figure of Hermes Trismegistus, because now all Europe, all Italy knew Hermes Trismegistus in 16th century and after in 17th centuries. Another prominent figure of Italian Renaissance, but in all Europe, was Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno saw the Copernican sun the Copernican sun in close relationship with the solar magic of Ficino. And Giordano Bruno showed up whether against Copernicus as an attitude that shows at certain sufficiency as it goes to rebuke this theory and its founder, having used only the matter, not go hence to capture the magical and religious meaning. But this is not true, because we see that Nicolaus Copernicus in his book talk about Hermes Trismegistus, and Hermes Trismegistus called the sun God visible. Giordano Bruno traveled all around Europe to bring the Hermetic tradition. He went in France where the King Henry III. After he went in England, the Queen was Elizabeth. But unluckily, the chances of the period didn't understand what talk about Giordano Bruno. because Giordano Bruno not only talked about our solar system, but he was the first who talked about a great big universe with a lot of planets and with a lot of lives. There isn't only life on our planets, but there are planets and planets and planets with life. And so this was incredible, new, incredible, great for the time. In 16th, 17th century was very difficult accepted that in the universe there were other lives. So Giordano Bruno at the end was born in Rome. We have a square here in Rome called the Campo dei Fiori with a statue of Giordano Bruno because he was taken from the Inquisition. By the Inquisition, and he remained in prison for 8 years. At the end, he was burned alive in this square. And meanwhile, the guards bring him to his dead. He talked about what he believed, but it was completely his works. Remain to us. And now we believe in what Giordano Bruno, this great Italian philosopher, said, but for the time was too big to accept a theory like that. And Bruno used Copernicanism to show in a most singular way as there is a pure science in Hermeticism. So he's a very particular character, Giordano Bruno. Copernicus, as it is not moved to the influence of solar mysticism or Hermeticism, gets rid to all its mathematical speculation. Instead, Giordano Bruno does downgrade the scientific work of the latter toward a stadium that take on the flavor of a primitive science, interpreting the Copernican scheme in the guise of an indecipherable mystery. Giordano Bruno believed a lot in a life in another planet, in a big infinite universe, but incredible, he doesn't believe in the maths used by Copernicus. This return to the past, which means almost identified with the Middle Age, in which theology was the crowning of philosophy and the ultimate goal of man, purely only in contemplation, can be transfused into a modern age, which sees its beginnings in 15th and 16th centuries as we see. The human will is permanently changed. The man, in conformity with religion and not contrary to the will of God, may exercise now own powers. For this reason, we say before that was a kind of magic that put the man as a great miracle. In the Middle Age, the man was completely under God, the volunty of God. Now the man can exercise own powers. Even the impulse killing of the old cosmology returns forms to the true science of astronomy. Copernicus replaced Ptolemy, improved Almagest in terms of calculation, using a raffinate Pythagorean mathematics and preserving the metaphysical assumption of perfect circularity of celestial motion. There is no trace in his theories of the elements that went to the foundation of the astronomical revolution, but in the Revolutionibus, the book of Copernicus we talked about before, opened issues that did collapse the entire Ptolemaic system because of its unstable equilibrium now, paving the way for Galilean mechanics and for Johann Kepler's thesis based on 3 laws that regulate the elliptical motions of the planets. All is connected, all is very particular, all is very strange, and paradoxically now we have to come back a little bit we have to give a step before, because now we have to talk about a particular astronomical authority, Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe was a Danish astronomer that still believe of the 16th century, who still believed in a geocentric model that was appointed later in a Teutonic system. And in this Teutonic system was according to which the sun would turn around the Earth, motionless, and all the other planets would rotate around our star. Very strange. Tycho Brahe argued that if the Earth was in motion, the nearby stars would have to change position relative to more distance. This effect actually exists and has the name of parallax, and this parallax was discovered in the 2nd century before Christ by Hipparchus from Nicaea. But the Danish astronomer didn't take into account parallax. In the Teutonic model, the Earth was the center of the orbits of the Moon and the Sun, which in turn was the center of the other 5 planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. This system, however, showed some advantages. The quality of the mathematical calculation equal to those of the Copernican system, and of course excluded the conflict with sacred scriptures and the Church, that they saw in the geocentric system the absolute will of the redemption. Why is it very important Tycho Brahe? Because Tycho Brahe was the master of Johannes Kepler, and now we are very close to the end of this particular story. In 1596, a young astronomer, Kepler, published a kind of pamphlet, the Mysterium Cosmographicum, the mystery of the cosmos, which showed that the unequal distances between the 6 planetary orbits could be determined by 5 regular polyhedra. Now we are inside the pure math. This work put him in the limelight and procured him the friendship of Tycho Brahe, who offered him a job as his assistant, instructing him to repeat the calculation of the orbit of the planet Mars, study who subsequently revealed to be decisive for the future driving up of the 3 laws of the orbits of the planets. Kepler worked with Tycho Brahe until the latter's death, which occurred in 1601. Without the precious fruit of the observation of his master and studies previously Copernican, Kepler would hardly discovered the true nature of the motion of the planets. And the results of all these studies and the study of the red planet, Mars, published in 1609 under the title De Martis Motibus Stellae, about the movement of the Mars star, were then extended to all the other planets, with another book that he talked about when he talked about Copernicus. The 3 laws, known as the 3 laws of Kepler, mathematically describe the motion of the planets around the Sun, according to elliptical orbits and not circular, as they had assumed before Ptolemy and Copernicus later. Kepler didn't come to explain the cause of the motion of the planets, discovered after by Newton in 1687, I think. But this does not detract from his brilliant intuition. taking into account that at the beginning of 17th century, the motion was considered to be an intrinsic characteristic of the bodies. Why? Because not if they were looking for the cause, but it was limited to its mere description. Kepler then realized that the sun exerted on the planets action that was binding them to their orbits. But Kepler not churches of that nature was this force. In any case, the laws represents a fundamental result in the history of astronomy and celestial mechanics. And just as mentioned above, they were the basis of subsequent studies of Newton. Now it's very important to put a lot of attention because we arrive at the center of our study. All of us, I think, have in our mind how is made St. Peter's Square. St. Peter's Square is an ellipse with a center when there is the obelisk and two fountains. We have to take mostly the first and the second Kepler's laws. The Kepler's first law states that the planets revolve around the sun in elliptical orbits, whose sun occupies one of the focus. The ellipse is a two-dimensional geometric figure comparable to a squared circle formed by the points of a plane whose distances from two fixed points, called focal points, have constant sun. Elliptical orbits of the planets are ellipses, little crash, close to the circumference. Now, if we see St. Peter's Square, one of the fountain can be one of the focus. The center, of course, is the sun with an obelisk. We know very well what was for ancient Egypt, the obelisk. So it's completely clear that in the Vatican, in 17th century, the Hermetic tradition was completely inside, because Bernini, the architect of St. Peter's Square, knew very well about all this. And in his drawing that he made before, of course, built St. Peter's Square, he showed very well these ellipses. The Kepler's second law states that the radius vector join a planet to the sun's space equal areas in equal times. The planets don't move on their orbits with constant speed. A planet is faster when it's closer to the sun, when we have perihelion, and slower as far from the sun, aphelion. At the end, we have the Kepler's third law that states that the square of the orbital period of a planet around the sun is proportional to the cube of its average distance from the sun. The planets closer to the sun have an orbital period shorter than the outer planets. If we think, for example, about Jupiter's years, that is more distant from the sun than the Earth, his year is 11 years and 863 days. Instead, if we think about Venus closer to us, to our star, the year of Venus is only about 0.615 years. All these laws was fundamental to the description of the heliocentric elliptical motion of the planets. And Johann Kepler put all in a book published in 1627. So in all these work that me and Robert made for this book. We start with the born of Cosimo de Medici in 1384, and we arrive in 1627. So we are across 3-4 century almost. And we see how the Hermetic tradition, Hermes Trismegistus, the philosophy, and now the astronomy was completely inside of the most scholars of this period. So we across the humanist time with the Renaissance and at the end the modern time. So we arrive at 17th centuries. There were a lot of changes in the history, but the religion of Hermes Trismegistus really went inside the mind of the Vatican. The theory of the centrality of the sun found inspiration in the attitude toward the Hermetic world, first interpreted, as we say, as the magic by Marsilio Ficino, then raised itself at science level with Copernicus, Brahe, and Kepler, to return almost falls back on itself in a context of religiosity with Giordano Bruno, who is freed from Copernicanism to achieve the vision of an infinite universe inhabited by innumerable worlds. In this way, Hermes Trismegistus, in conjunction with the Neoplatonism and the newfound astronomical and mathematical science, took place during the period of his victorious influence of Western thought, a singular role, but only so as to shape the destiny of man. Because now we are in front of some century where the destiny of man is completely changed. Cristoforo Colombo found America, the future United States. Finally, the Earth is a roundabout and not flat as the Middle Age thought. All is changed. All is in the hand of the man, not only in the hand of God, as was before. And this thanks to Corpus Hermeticum, that 14 books discovered from that priest, Leonardo from Pistoia, from the translation, by the translation of Marsilio Ficino, who gave to Cosimo de Medici. So from an important little Italian city as Florence, the Hermetic tradition exploded to the world in Rome to change a lot the Vatican thought and the Vatican architecture, and all over Europe with Giordano Bruno. This work that me and Robert made is really to show how history and philosophy sometimes are different from what we learned from school.
Different from what we learned from school, but not so different from ancient Egypt. It sounds like it's all come full circle.
Yes. It's a study that we made with a lot of passion, with a lot of research, of course. And we really discovered a new religion that was completely inside the Renaissance period. When I talk about Renaissance, because I can say every time humanism, Renaissance, modern age. If I talk about Renaissance, I want to include all of them. Because I repeat, we talk about 3-4 centuries. So talk with Renaissance. In Renaissance, there is all. Because here in Italy, we had a lot of history, not only inside, of course, our country, but inside literature, philosophy, art, and all is completely divided in some periods. If we talk about Middle Age, for example, in art, we have Romantic art, we have Gothic art, we have Humanist art. All is divided in some years. In some years, you have Romanic art. Sorry. In other years, you have Gothic art. That Italian Gothic art is completely different from, for example, England Gothic art. We really take the numbers of the years to divide all this period. So we start with humanism, but humanism is very close to the end of Middle Age, because we say that Middle Age finished with the discovery of America. But we are inside of humanism. It's very complicated to put things all together. So for this reason, in this talking that we have, I say a lot of time Renaissance, because it's more easy to comprehend all these centuries all together. If we talk about modern age is another completely different period, with another literature, another art. Rome, for example, was completely changed with the new reform. Before Rome was completely with a building from Middle Age. But in 1596, a pope decided to put down all from the past and rebuild Rome with Baroque art. For this reason, in Rome, there is Roman art from Roman age, Roman period, and a lot of Baroque art. Rome is completely Baroque. St. Peter too is Baroque. It's a very complicated period, and more complicated in Italy than in other European countries, because Italy until 1861 was divided in a lot of little states, ruled with the government of some important royal Italian family, or maybe from some royal family from Europe. Italy wasn't a state like France, big kingdom, England, a big kingdom, Spain, absolutely not, Portugal, Germany, absolutely not. We were divided in a lot of little big states, and every state has his philosopher, his art, his literature, his language. So put all together in a unique philosophy, in a unique context, in a unique religious, as a Hermetic tradition, is very important to give not only to Italy but to Europe a big instrument to be completely together. And the Vatican, who has had in that period a lot of power, a lot of wealthy, a lot of yes, a lot of corruption too. I don't think that the Holy Spirit inside Sistine Chapel arrive every time when there is an election of the Pope, especially in that period. Absolutely not. We have to think, for example, about Avignon in France, at the start of 14th century. The church moved from Rome to France, because in this way wanted the King of France. This was an incredible bad things for Rome, for Italy, for the Vatican, for the church. It was a shame. after the church came back in Vatican, in Rome, started to have gained a lot of power without a lot of emperors, of kings that wanted to put their powers on the church, but starts again to be alone with her power, its power. But there were a lot of corruption, of course. The philosopher of Hermetic tradition wanted to change all this, wanted to renew the church, wanted to give a new birth of the church, because the church was arrived at a point not come back, not return. So the Hermetic tradition with Hermes Trismegistus, with this natural magic, wanted to give to the Vatican a sort of wake up. We can be better. We can give to people a new hope. Listen to people. The people wants to be to listen. His freedom. Listen to people. The church in that period didn't do. The church was only the church with the power, with the diplomacy, with all we can imagine now in a contemporary government. But the philosophers and the astronomers to say to the church, change, give to you another possibility, and the another possibility is directly came from by Hermetic tradition. Follow what say Hermes Trismegistus. And in Roman time too, a lot of great emperor bring from ancient Egypt a lot of not only obelisk, but a lot of monuments. For example, there were the Temple of Isis, very close where there is the St. Peter Church today, was incredibly big, and a lot of Roman important person of the government built some pyramids as Istanbul. So the ancient Rome was completely inside and filled of Egyptian tradition, we can say it this way. They knew very well, Romans knew very well Egypt, what was his religion, and in Rome there was a lot of this. And now in a lot parts of Rome, in a lot areas, we have this obelisk. This obelisk with at the basis, as I said before, there are all the inscription, or from the Hermetica, or from where come from this obelisk. For example, in Navona Square, there is an obelisk, and on the basis is written that this obelisk came directly from the kingdom of the King Soti, the big King Soti, the big Pharaoh Soti. And this part of the base of the obelisk is a perfect oriented with Kiji building. Before I talked about Alexander VII, the Pope. He was the family Kiji. And this part of the obelisk is in front of Kiji building. The Kiji, family Kiji was very, very rich in Rome in the modern age, in the middle of 17th century. So here in Rome, we have a lot. Rome, I think, is one of the most beautiful city of the world. But because there is inside of Rome all this tradition through the centuries, you can feel, you can touch, you can smell. There is a smog too, of course, but a lot of smog. But really, if you go inside Rome's history, you can find all this. And when Robert said to me to write this book, really I understand the importance of what we want go to write. Because I think that maybe this book opened the eyes of in a lot of people to understand better what is our history. And there is another important thing that I didn't talk before about the city of sun. Sorry, tell me.
Do what?
Yes, no, I think that you were asking me something.
No, I was just going to say go ahead with what you said you hadn't covered yet.
What?
Huh? I'm sorry, I had a little trouble making out what you were saying. But a minute ago, you said there was something you haven't covered yet. I was going to suggest you go ahead and cover it real quick.
No, I was talking about the City of the Sun.
Right.
Yes, the City of the Sun by Campanella. Because with Giordano Bruno, another important philosopher is Tommaso Campanella, born in the south part of Italy, in Naples. And he talked a lot about the City of the Sun. And Robert, in the book Talisman, talk about the City of the Sun in many cities of Europe. But with this Vatican Heresy, we explained that the Temple of the Sun is really St. Peter and his square. And Campanella in this book, The City of the Sun, talk a lot about Hermetic tradition and talk a lot about the new astronomical discovery. He didn't talk directly about Copernicus, Kepler, Tycho Brahe, but he imagined a kind of city completely taken the context of a kind of Egyptian city. Like Egyptian city was built, so we have to build the other city in all Europe and especially here in Italy, as we talk in the book. And Campanella was very important for this. And if Giordano Bruno remained 8 years in prison, Campanella remained in prison for 27 years for his book, a lot. But at the end, he tried to went out and he went in France. At the court of Louis XIV, and he said to the queen that in a year she had a baby, and this baby was the future Louis XIV, called the Sun King. So Campanella was very important in Hermetic tradition, not only here in Italy, but in France too, because he gave a kind of prophecy to the queen and to his future son. And Louis XIV was, all of us know that was a really great king. And he was called the Sun King. And he knew a lot about Egypt and about the Hermetic tradition. He built a lot in Paris. And this we can discover in Talisman of Robert Bouval. So all is connected. All is... in that period in Europe, there were a lot of wars, a lot of problems with Catholic and Protestants, a lot of problems, but all is connected. If we think
like
about...
one big tapestry.
Sorry?
Like one big tapestry.
Yes. Yes, really. So... we try to explain this in our book.
Okay. Well, I show we still got something like 5 or 6 minutes left. I wanted you to have time to tell everybody if you got any forums or groups, how can they reach you if they got questions, that sort of thing.
Of course, I am on Facebook. My Facebook name is Chiara Dainelli, and there is my picture on the wall is the Vatican Heresy, the cover of the book, so people can find me without problem. And under my name is written Hohenzollern, because of course I signed my book in the United States as Chiara Hohenzollern, the name that I take after my wedding. And they reach me without problem. They can send all message that they want if they have to ask something. I'm here to answer to all people as curiosity, wanted to have some news. I'm completely ready to talk about the book, absolutely. And there is an Italian version of the book too, L'Eresia Vaticana. So I'm on Facebook without problem, so people can reach me.
Okay, now are you and Robert planning on writing a follow-up on this book?
Now we don't talk about this. We don't talk because now our research is arrived to St. Peter's Square. Robert said to me that I have to write a book about Hermetic tradition, but I'm thinking about this. But I have some other project too. But we wanted to find something else about Hermetica, about Hermes Trismegistus, and the connection with the Vatican and all the astronomy, to increase and to put more information in the future. So we are not talking, but maybe it's in the air.
Okay. All righty then. Is there any book signings or anything like that coming up?
Sorry?
Any kind of book signings or any special events you want to tell them about?
Of course. I really hope to be in the United States soon to present this book. Absolutely, because I really, really want, and I wanted to put my signature to all people that they want. If some people want the book, can find on internet, and if they want my signature, can send me the book, and I put it without problem.
All righty then. Real quick, I want to also inform everybody that this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. Central, the same time that this show started today, I will be interviewing Andrew Collins about his most recent book, Göbekli Tepe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's perhaps the oldest civilization found yet, and he actually seems to think that it's connected to the Garden of Eden. He thinks he's actually found it, and we're going to find out why he's so sure that that's what his find in reality is, amongst other questions. I'd love to have everybody there. Then next Wednesday, well, actually, I don't have that on here. I'd have to look on my schedule to find that. I hadn't posted it yet. We're going to have... Wednesday I got corroborating evidence with James Welsh. Both of those shows I just mentioned are going to be on Talk Now Radio. I want to let you know that on corroborating evidence, James Welsh says he has definitely found proof that's going to force disclosure of UFOs, and according to him, the Russians are coming out with evidence on it too. And I read today that even the Mexican government's coming out with it, so who knows, folks? There might be some, information going down here in the real near future. And then next Thursday, I'm going to be interviewing Trent Goodbody, and we're going to talk about how to handle the police. when they come to your door and what your rights are. I don't want to go involved in anything more than that because of the fact we're fixing to get interrupted with the break time music, other than to say maybe remind you my website's www.talknowradio.net and to let everybody know that knows I've been in and out of the hospital a lot. I've got me a tablet and I'm trying to modify it so that I can use it to broadcast straight from the hospital should I be in there, so that hopefully in the future I won't be having to ask people to cover for me. I'll just broadcast from a different location. So everybody wish me luck on the modifications on that to make it work. The music will start any second. So with that, I'm going to bid everybody a fond adieu. And y'all take care of yourselves. And I want to thank you, Sharia, for, coming on the show and having this talk with us and telling us about your book. And hopefully we can have you back again in the future to talk about the Hermetic tradition.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Royce, and all our audience. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. You have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. And to you too. And a big hug to all. Bye.
Bye-bye. And folks, I timed that one just perfect. Here it goes the music. You guys be good. I'll see you next Thursday. Hopefully this Saturday y'all come to my site.